If you make $30 an hour, you're supposed to be doing well. That's what we're told. It sounds like success, stability, and security. But here's the uncomfortable question. If $30 an hour is such a good salary, why does it still feel like you're always behind? Maybe you pay your bills, but barely. Maybe saving feels impossible. Maybe one unexpected expense throws everything off, and you start wondering how people earning less seem calmer while you're stressed despite doing everything right. Today, I want to show you something most people never calculate. Not how much they earn on paper, but how much they actually keep. Because your paycheck is lying to you. Before your money ever reaches your bank account, it's already being sliced, redirected, and quietly drained. This video isn't about working harder, asking for raises, or chasing promotions. It's about understanding the system you're operating inside. A system designed to make decent salaries feel comfortable enough to survive, but never powerful enough to escape. Over the next few minutes, we're going to break down where your money really goes, why time is the most expensive thing you're spending, and how a $30 an hour job can realistically turn into $4 an hour in real life. This isn't meant to discourage you. It's meant to wake you up and prepare you for what comes next, starting right now. In the United States, the idea of a good salary is deeply emotional. It's not just about money, it's about safety, respect, and proof that your hard work matters. For decades, earning more per hour was the promised path to stability and a better life. So when someone reaches $30 an hour, the brain labels it as success. That number sounds high because it used to mean something very different. Years ago, a salary like that could comfortably support housing, healthcare, transportation, and savings. Today, the cost of living has quietly outrun income, but expectations never adjusted. We still measure success using outdated benchmarks in a very different economic reality. That's why so many people feel confused, frustrated, and even ashamed. They hit the number they were told to chase, yet nothing feels secure. This gap between expectation and reality is the foundation of the salary trap. The system doesn't fail loudly, it fails quietly, month after month. Your lifestyle slowly expands, your expenses normalize, and your paycheck becomes fully spoken for. Nothing feels extreme, which is exactly why it's so dangerous. And before you ever question your spending habits or financial discipline, something else hits first. You realize the problem might not be you, but the math behind your income. And once you start asking that question, the next step is unavoidable. To understand the trap, we have to follow the money from the very beginning, because the first place your salary disappears is also the least discussed. It happens before bills, before rent, and before you make a single decision. That's where the real breakdown starts, and it begins the moment your paycheck is processed, which brings us directly to the first invisible cut most workers ignore: taxes, the largest expense you never consciously approve, every year. Before you ever pay rent, buy groceries, or touch your own money, taxes take the first bite. This is the part of the salary trap most people underestimate because it doesn't feel like spending. It feels automatic, invisible, and unavoidable. But taxes are the single largest expense for most American workers. When you hear $30 an hour, your brain multiplies it by 40 hours and imagines $1,200 a week. That number never actually exists. Federal income tax, state tax, Social Security, and Medicare remove a massive portion before the money ever becomes yours. For many workers, that cut is 25 to 30% right out of the gate. And the problem isn't just the percentage, it's the psychology. Because you never see the full amount, you never feel the loss. You adjust your lifestyle around a smaller number without realizing how much earning power disappeared first. Over time, that missing money becomes normal, even though it represents hundreds of hours of your life every year. What makes this worse is how taxes scale. As your income increases, the cuts grow faster than your sense of progress. Raises feel smaller, bonuses feel underwhelming, and every step forward seems to come with heavier resistance. That's why many people feel stuck even as their salary rises. This isn't an argument against taxes themselves, it's about understanding their impact honestly. If you don't know your real after-tax hourly rate, you're building your financial life on a false number. You think you're earning $30 an hour, but in reality, the system immediately revalues your time downward. And taxes are only the first layer. Right after them comes another quiet deduction, one that's often marketed as a benefit. It shows up as protection, security, and responsibility, but it reduces your paycheck even further without ever increasing your freedom. That's where the next cut happens, and most people never question it at all. By the time you notice your take-home pay, the damage is already done. What looked like a strong wage has quietly weakened, and just when you think the deductions are finished, another category appears on your pay stub, quietly shrinking it further under the label of benefits you were told would help you, not trap you financially. After taxes, most workers assume the damage is done. Whatever hits their bank account feels final, like the real salary. But that's not true. The next reduction is hidden behind friendly language and corporate branding, and it's presented as something you're lucky to have. Health insurance premiums, retirement plans, disability coverage, vision, dental, and a long list of optional-sounding benefits quietly subtract money every single paycheck. You're told these are perks, but in reality, they are mandatory costs tied to keeping your job. Whether you use them or not, you pay for them. The most expensive example is health insurance. For many workers, monthly premiums alone can equal several dollars per hour. Add deductibles and out-of-pocket costs, and the protection you think you have often only activates after thousands are already spent. Yet the paycheck reduction happens immediately without negotiation. Retirement contributions sound smart, and they can be. But when they're automatic and inflexible, they reduce your cash flow long before you've built stability. For someone living paycheck to paycheck, that creates stress, not security. None of this feels painful because it's fragmented. Small amounts disappear across multiple categories, making the total easy to ignore. But when you stack them together, the gap between your advertised wage and your usable income grows wider. And this is where many people stop counting. They look at their take-home pay and think, this is what I earn. But earning money and being able to use it are two very different things. Because once the paycheck hits your account, an even bigger force begins working against you, one that has nothing to do with deductions and everything to do with where your job exists. That pressure will define your lifestyle long before you realize it's slowly controlling your daily financial choices. Once your paycheck finally reaches your bank account, reality sets the rules, and one of the biggest realities is geography. High-paying jobs rarely exist in low-cost areas. They cluster in cities where rent is expensive, transportation is necessary, and everyday life costs more than most people expect. A $30 an hour job often comes with an unspoken requirement. You must live where that salary already means less. Housing alone can consume half of your take-home pay. Rent increases feel normal, deposits feel unavoidable, and moving farther away feels like the only compromise. But distance creates another expense that rarely shows up on paper. Transportation costs rise quickly. Car payments, insurance, fuel, maintenance, parking, and tolls quietly become part of the job itself. Public transportation isn't free either, and it still costs time. Every mile between you and your workplace converts income into expense. Then come the daily costs. Groceries cost more. Eating out becomes a habit because time feels scarce. Coffee turns into a ritual. Convenience becomes a coping mechanism for exhaustion. None of these expenses feel reckless on their own. They feel earned. They feel justified. And that's exactly why they're dangerous. Inflation makes this worse. Even when your salary stays the same, your purchasing power shrinks. The job doesn't change, but the price of maintaining the same lifestyle quietly increases. You're not upgrading your life, you're paying more just to stand still. At this point, many people assume they have a spending problem. They try budgeting apps, cutting small pleasures, and blaming discipline. But the issue isn't irresponsibility, it's structure. The environment around the job demands constant spending to function normally. And just when you think you understand the cost, there's one final expense most people never calculate. Not money, but time. Because every dollar you earn is tied to hours you can never get back. And the more distance, stress, and exhaustion the job requires, the lower your real hourly rate becomes. Once we factor that in, the salary illusion weakens even more. That's where the next hidden cost begins to surface. When people think about income, they think in hours worked and money earned. But what they rarely count is everything surrounding those hours. Time spent getting ready, commuting, recovering from stress, and mentally carrying the job home with you. None of that is paid, yet all of it belongs to your employer in practice. A 1-hour commute each way doesn't sound extreme. Many people accept it as normal. But that's 10 unpaid hours every week, over 500 hours a year. When you divide your real take-home pay by the true number of hours your job consumes, your hourly wage quietly drops again. Then there's overtime, staying late, answering messages, thinking about work on weekends. Even when it's not officially required, it's socially expected. Productivity culture rewards availability, not boundaries. The result is simple. More time given, no additional compensation received. This constant drain creates another cost most people miss. Exhaustion changes behavior. When you're tired, you spend more. You choose convenience over efficiency. You trade money for speed, comfort, and relief. That decision feels personal, but it's a predictable response to time scarcity. Over time, work stops being something you do and becomes something you organize your entire life around. Your energy peaks belong to your job. Your best hours are sold first. What's left goes to survival, not progress. At this point, the math becomes uncomfortable. You're earning less per hour than you thought, spending more because of fatigue, and losing time you can't recover. Yet the system tells you this is normal adulthood. And here's where the trap tightens. To keep up with this lifestyle, most people don't just rely on income anymore. They rely on credit, because when time and energy run out, borrowing becomes the easiest way to maintain the appearance of stability. That's when debt enters the picture, not as a mistake, but as a solution the system quietly encourages. And once debt becomes normal, escaping the salary trap becomes even harder. At this stage, debt doesn't feel reckless. It feels practical, necessary even. Credit cards, car loans, and financing step in to support a lifestyle your income alone can't comfortably maintain. Not luxury, just normal life. And that's what makes this part of the trap so effective. The car is the clearest example. Many jobs require reliable transportation, yet the cost of owning that vehicle keeps rising. Payments, insurance, maintenance, fuel. What starts as a tool for earning income slowly becomes a monthly obligation that demands more work just to stay current. You don't own the car, the job does. Credit cards fill the gaps next. Unexpected expenses, medical bills, repairs, or simply the cost of being tired. Swiping feels easier than restructuring your life, especially when your schedule leaves no room to rethink the system. Minimum payments make the problem feel manageable, while interest quietly stretches it into the future. Housing works the same way. High rent locks you into long hours. Moving feels risky. Downgrading feels like failure. So you stay, telling yourself it's temporary, even when temporary becomes permanent. Debt changes the relationship with your job. It removes flexibility. You can't walk away, negotiate freely, or take risks when payments depend on your next paycheck. What once felt like income security turns into obligation pressure. This is the hidden function of debt inside the salary trap. It stabilizes the system by keeping workers dependent, not because they're irresponsible, but because the structure makes borrowing feel like the only way to keep going. And now, with taxes taken, benefits deducted, costs inflated, time exhausted, and debt layered on top, there's only one question left. When everything is accounted for, how much are you really earning per hour? To answer that, we have to do the math most people avoid. The final calculation changes everything. Now it's time to stop speaking in concepts and look at real numbers. This is where the salary trap becomes impossible to ignore. Let's take a typical $30 an hour job and follow the money all the way through. $30 an hour, 40 hours a week, comes out to about $62,000 a year before taxes. On paper, that sounds solid, but after federal income tax, state tax, Social Security, and Medicare, a large portion disappears immediately. For many workers, take-home pay drops to roughly $45,000. That alone cuts the hourly rate down significantly, and the day hasn't even started yet. Next come benefits. Health insurance premiums, retirement deductions, and other automatic contributions quietly remove thousands more each year. Now your usable income might be closer to $38,000 or $40,000. That's the money you actually live on. Then we subtract the cost of working. Housing near your job, transportation, food inflated by time scarcity, utilities, clothing, phone, internet. These aren't luxuries, they are requirements. After covering basic expenses, many workers are left with very little discretionary income, even with what's considered a good salary. Now, let's factor in time. The job may say 40 hours a week, but when you add commuting, preparation, recovery, and mental load, it easily becomes 50 or even 55 hours. Spread that reduced income across the real number of hours your job consumes, and your hourly rate drops again. And finally, debt. Interest payments don't just take money, they take future time. Every dollar paid in interest represents hours you'll need to work later for something you already consumed. When you subtract those payments from your remaining income, the final number becomes uncomfortable. When everything is counted honestly, many workers discover they're effectively earning just a few dollars per hour in real, usable value. Not because they're failing, but because the structure extracts value at every step. This is the moment most people feel anger or disbelief. That's normal, because once you see the real math, the question is no longer, why am I struggling? It becomes, why did this system ever make sense? And once that question forms, another realization follows naturally. If working more hours only feeds the same machine, then effort alone can't be the solution, which means the problem isn't motivation, it's the model itself. That's where the salary trap reveals its final truth. Once you see the real math, the instinctive response is simple. Work more, take overtime, chase promotions, push harder. That's what we've been trained to do. But inside the salary trap, more effort doesn't create freedom. It deepens dependence. Hourly and salaried income have a built-in ceiling. There are only so many hours in a day, and your energy declines long before the clock runs out. Even when your pay increases, taxes rise, costs expand, and expectations grow. The system absorbs your extra effort and returns only a fraction of the value. This is why so many high earners still feel trapped. They earn more, but they also owe more. Their lifestyle inflates to match the income, and the margin never truly appears. Every raise comes with new obligations, not new options. The deeper problem is structural. When money is tied directly to time, growth becomes linear. You can only move forward by trading more of your life. There's no leverage, no scale, and no separation between effort and reward. If you stop, the income stops. That's not security, that's vulnerability. This is also why burnout is so common. The system rewards availability, not sustainability. It doesn't ask whether the model works long-term, only whether you can keep up right now. Understanding this isn't meant to make you quit your job tomorrow. It's meant to change how you see income, because once you recognize that time-based pay has limits, the logical next step becomes clear. You don't need more hours, you need a different structure.
And that's the turning point in this conversation, because there is a group of people who aren't smarter, luckier, or working harder than everyone else. They simply operate under a different financial logic. To understand how escaping the salary trap is possible, we need to look at what they do differently, not emotionally, but structurally. Wealthy people don't escape the salary trap by accident. They do it by playing a different game entirely. The biggest difference isn't intelligence, education, or even risk tolerance. It's structure. While most people focus on earning more income, wealthy individuals focus on building systems that earn without requiring constant presence. Instead of trading time for money, they work to separate the two. Their income isn't tied to hours worked, but to ownership, leverage, and scale. Businesses, investments, intellectual property, and automated systems allow value to be created repeatedly from a single effort. The work may be intense upfront, but the payoff continues long after the effort stops. Another key difference is how they view expenses. Most workers spend first and hope to save what's left. Wealthy individuals reverse that logic. They allocate money toward assets before lifestyle, not because they don't enjoy comfort, but because they understand that assets create options. Options create freedom. They also respect compounding. Time works for them instead of against them. Whether through investing, business equity, or skill-based leverage, growth builds on itself. Small advantages stack, and momentum replaces constant effort. Risk is often misunderstood here. Wealthy people don't take reckless risks. They take calculated ones with asymmetric upside. They structure decisions so potential gains outweigh potential losses. Most importantly, they avoid risks that permanently trap their time. Losing money can be recovered. Losing years cannot. This doesn't mean they never work jobs. Many start exactly where everyone else starts. The difference is intention. A job is a tool, not an identity. Income from labor is used strategically to acquire assets, not to inflate lifestyle. And this is where the shift begins for anyone listening. Escaping the salary trap doesn't require quitting tomorrow or gambling everything. It starts by understanding that your job should fund your exit, not become your cage. Once that perspective changes, the next step becomes practical, not theoretical. The question stops being, how much can I earn, and becomes, what can I build? That's the mindset shift that opens the door out of the trap. And now it's time to talk about how to take the first real steps in that direction, without unrealistic promises or overnight fantasies.
Escaping the salary trap doesn't happen in one dramatic move. It happens through small, intentional shifts that change how your money and time behave over the long term. The mistake most people make is waiting for a perfect moment. The reality is that progress starts while you're still inside the system. The first step is creating financial breathing room. That means controlling expenses without chasing deprivation, not cutting everything, but cutting what doesn't buy freedom. Reducing fixed costs increases flexibility, and flexibility is the foundation of every future decision. Without margin, every plan stays theoretical. The second step is automation. Wealth is rarely built through willpower alone. Automatic investing, automatic savings, and automatic debt reduction remove emotion from the process. Even small amounts matter when they're consistent. The goal isn't speed, it's permanence. Next comes skill leverage. Instead of asking how to earn more hours, ask how to increase the value of each hour. Skills that scale digitally, analytically, or operationally create leverage. They allow one effort to impact many outcomes. That's how income begins to detach from time. Then comes asset ownership. This doesn't mean risky speculation or complex strategies. It means gradually acquiring things that produce value. Index funds, small business equity, digital products, or cash-flowing projects. Assets don't replace income immediately, but they reduce dependence over time. Equally important is mental separation from your job. A job is not failure, it's fuel. When you stop expecting it to provide fulfillment, freedom, and security all at once, it becomes easier to use it strategically. You stop inflating your lifestyle and start funding your exit. None of this requires extreme sacrifice. It requires direction. The goal isn't to escape overnight. It's to stop digging deeper. And once you realize that freedom is built gradually, not dramatically, pressure fades. You don't need to win fast. You need to move consistently. That understanding sets up the final shift in this conversation, because escaping the salary trap isn't just about strategy. It's about responsibility, patience, and choosing a long-term game most people never even realize exists. At this point, the salary trap should feel less like a theory and more like something you recognize in your own life, not because you failed, but because the system was never designed to be questioned. It works best when people stay busy, distracted, and grateful just enough to stop asking deeper questions. Most workers don't lose financially in one dramatic collapse. They lose slowly, year by year, through small compromises, rising costs, and postponed dreams. Nothing breaks, nothing explodes. Life just becomes smaller than it was supposed to be. The most dangerous part of the salary trap is comfort. Not luxury, just comfort. Enough to survive, enough to repeat, enough to delay change indefinitely. And the longer you stay comfortable, the harder it becomes to imagine another way. But awareness changes the equation. Once you see how your time, money, and energy are being converted into obligations instead of options, you can't unsee it. And that awareness creates responsibility, not guilt, responsibility. You don't need to reject work, ambition, or effort. You need to aim them correctly. The same discipline used to maintain a job can be used to build assets. The same consistency used to pay bills can be used to buy freedom. The difference is direction. This is where many people stop. They understand the problem, agree with the logic, and then return to routine. But understanding without action changes nothing. Even small steps taken consistently alter your future trajectory. So let this be the moment you stop measuring success by your hourly rate. Measure it by how much control you're building over your time. Because here's the truth most people never hear clearly enough. If your income stops when you stop working, you don't have a career, you have a trap. If this video made you uncomfortable, that's a good sign. Discomfort is often the first signal that an old belief is breaking down. The goal here was never to criticize hard work or ambition. It was to expose a system that quietly trades your time for just enough security to keep you from building real freedom. You don't need to make drastic moves tomorrow. You don't need to quit your job or chase unrealistic shortcuts. What you do need is clarity. Clarity about where your money actually goes, clarity about how your time is being spent, and clarity about whether the path you're on leads where you think it does. From this point forward, every financial decision can be viewed through a different lens. Does this increase dependence or does it create options? Does it lock you into the next paycheck or move you one step closer to control over your time? That's the mindset shift that changes everything. If this perspective helped you see your situation differently, support the channel by liking the video and subscribing. It tells the algorithm to share this message with people who need it but haven't heard it yet. And I want you to comment one word below: freedom. Not as a promise, not as motivation, but as a reminder of what you're actually working toward. Because bills don't define success, titles don't define success, and hourly rates don't define success. Control does. And once you start building it, even slowly, the salary trap begins to lose its power.